Uh-huh. This is a space.
Piano was back behind.
Huh.
Steve.
Anytime you're ready.
Sometimes you say, and Lynn has.
Oh, and Lynn has some opening music for us. Well, for announcements, I'm not sure we have really any at this time. Unless anybody knows any. Joys and concerns to share?
Well, it's a joy for us to be here.
And a joy for us to see you here.
We've had a good time meeting Eric partway between North Carolina and Iowa. It was easier to do it this way than either of us driving 2 days to get to the other place. So we've been 2 days with them and been a delight because we haven't seen them since last year. Yeah. We expect to see them in Belize. They're going to visit us in Belize. We're leaving for
Nice.
Belize in January the 13th. For 3 months.
Wow.
Just know you're all welcome to come visit us.
That's right.
Thank you.
Well, maybe we'll just hop in the car some Wednesday and start driving.
Take a trip through Mexico.
No, I don't think so. Well, we had, Nancy had a visit with her care team this week and after her fall. So they checked her all out and the notes noted it, everything's progressing, which is more
Fall
like
this week.
the day, but no, the previous week, right before Christmas. So now she's supposed to wear a fall device, and they did talk her into getting physical and occupational therapy at home again. So we'll see how that goes. It took them 2 hours to get her to that point. But she had a good Christmas. We went away for some, and then mostly people came to our place. So she's been pretty happy. That's the good thing.
That is good.
So what happened with the fall? I wasn't aware of it.
It was 2 weeks ago Friday, when I went to Ohio for Christmas with my family, and I had left, and in between my leaving and Lisa's arriving a couple hours later, Nancy somehow fell. Now, she says she went down on her knees, just slipped, but her whole back was bruised, and the back of her legs, so she had to go down and fall on, we think she fell on the wooden rocker and hit it on the way down and bounced off. And then she was down for like 2 hours till somebody got there. But she was just laying on the floor when Lisa came in with her legs crossed, looking at the ceiling. And she goes, "I'm over here. Come help me up." So, but with her vascular dementia, they're very concerned that if she falls and hits her head, that's it. Because her brain, frankly, looks like Swiss cheese on an MRI. It's just lots of dead spots. So, but she had a great holiday.
That's important.
I was joking earlier. I said every day has been a holiday with her because she goes and looks and she goes, "Well, where'd these jeans come from? Well, where'd this sweater come from?" She opens new presents every day. And it's the same presents. Well, let's center in, and then Chip's the worship leader this morning. We'll see if he brought the right message or the wrong message with him. He said he picked up the wrong one. I don't know if he's teasing or not.
Well, I did bring the wrong message. I wasn't kidding. Today would have been my mother's 100th birthday.
Ah.
And I'll look at this and see. This is a draft. I got up at 3 o'clock this morning and rewrote it. I rewrote it Saturday night because I didn't like anything that I was going to have in there. And then I rewrote it at 3 o'clock this morning, and that's on my desk. So today would have been my mother's 100th birthday. She died 5 years ago on the 2nd of November. And my message for today was going to be all about her and the wonderful life she lived. I was watching the news early in December, and this lady came on and was talking about the death of her mother. And what got her through the sadness was something her father told her. When you go to the cemetery and look at tombstones, you see 2 dates and a dash between them. Don't think about the birth and death dates. They just tell you how long they lived and the dates where the person had no control over. What you need to think about is the dash. How did they live their life? Did they make a difference? Were they kind? Did they have family they were close to? And did they have friends? Okay, my mother was born on New Year's Eve. My grandparents had a birthday party. And my grandma says to Grandpa, "I think you better get me home because I think the baby's coming." And Grandpa says, "Hold on, Haji." That's what he called her. That was her nickname because her last name was Hodgin. He said, "Hold on, Haji. If you can wait, if the baby is the first one of the new year, Polk's Milk Company will give us free milk." And my grandma gave my grandpa the look, which she passed on to my mother and Brandon. And they went home and mother was born. Okay, and she died like she wanted to. She always said, I want to die like my mother did, in my home and in my bed. And she did. We were watching our favorite soap opera, The Young and the Restless, and about 1 o'clock, mother fell asleep. And I said, well, we'll have to watch this when it's on later tonight. And I got up and went out of the room, and when I came back, mother was gone. So she died like she wanted to, in her sleep, in her bed. So the beginning and end dates were 12/31/23 and the dash, and 11/23/18. Well, I was going to tell you all about my mother, but most of you knew my mother and know all about her and the famous people she worked for and knew. But I'm going to tell you something about someone you don't know about, and that's my Grandma Artie that we just buried Friday. I've been surrounded by a lot of really strong, determined women. My Grandma Opal, my Grandma Ruby, Aunt Ruth, Aunt Pep, my mother, and Grandma Artie was one of these people. Now, she wasn't my birth grandma. She just adopted me. Well, I want to tell you about her. She was born on March 16th, 1921, in Russell Springs, Kentucky. She was the youngest of 12. In 1933, her father was killed, and her mother, as they say, took to the bed and didn't get up, and she died 9 months later. So at the age of 13, Grandma Artie was an orphan, and she had 2 sisters that looked after her. But shortly afterwards, being at the Depression and all, she got a job as a live-in maid. And she cooked, and she cleaned, and she looked after 2 children, and she got $1.25 a week. But she was treated like family. Later, she went to work for another people, the Dunbar family, and they had a store and a soda fountain. And she worked at the soda fountain and in the store and did cleaning and cooking and all that. And she met George Bradshaw. He was down visiting and saw her at the soda fountain and was just struck by her beauty. And he goes, who is she? And the cousin said, Artie George. And he goes, I got to meet her. And he went back home and came back, and on November the 11th, 1939, they were married and moved to Newcastle. They had a son, Charles, and then they had 3 grandchildren. Charles had 3 children, Troy, Dale, and Michelle. She was a member of the church, South Memorial Drive Church of God, for over 80 years. She was very active in the church. She did all the funeral meals, and I can't remember what, she formed some kind of group for teenagers, and she was just always on call. She was a person that always wanted to do something. And Grandma outlived her 2 husbands. George died, and then she married Bob, and she outlived those 2 husbands. She outlived her son, all her brothers and sisters, and 2 grandchildren. So she had a kind of hard, but she never let it get her down. She was always this positive person. Well, I got to meet Grandma Artie about in 1990, and Troy and I went up there, and I met his brother Dale, and Troy and Dale and I ran around, and then it was Dale and I, so we were Chip and Dale, quite the hoot. And Dale would always want to go to Newcastle. He goes, let's go to Newcastle and I'll call Grandma and tell her we're coming. I said, you just want to go for a free meal. And he goes, well, she is a wonderful cook. And I said, yes, she is, and I'll be happy to go. And after a while, she said, don't call me Mrs. Bound. I said, well, what do you want me to call you? And she goes, well, I just think I've adopted you. You're one of my boys, so you can call me Grandma. So that's how she became Grandma Artie. She just adopted me. And it's funny because her two sisters that I met, Lovey and Deshi, said the same thing. Well, if you're going to call Artie Grandma, you might as well call us Aunt Deshi and Aunt Lovey, which was totally different than when I grew up and my mother married Bud, and none of his sisters wanted to be called Aunt anything, and they never referred to me as their nephew. They always, even until they died, referred to me as, this is Chip, Dorothy's son. They didn't want to claim me as a relative. Now, 3 of the cousins did, but that's it. So this was really warming for me, that wanting to be part of their family. I wonder where I am. Well, when I met Grandma Artie, the first thing that struck me was she looked like a beautiful Jackie Kennedy. Except she was prettier. And I was just stunned. I'm like, she looks like Jackie Kennedy, except she's prettier. And we went into her little modest home, and it was decorated wonderful. She had wonderful taste. Her home, it looked like something out of a magazine. And she was a wonderful cook, like I said, and I would just love to go back and have one more waffle that she made. Like I said, I brought the wrong script. She was always very active. I remember one time we went up to Newcastle and Grandma Artie was on the roof fixing Dale's roof because there were leaks, and she was 75. Oh, I wanted to tell you where she worked. Well, she worked at RCA in Indianapolis, and then she worked at the Hallmark store. I think she worked at RCA for 12 years. And then she worked at the Hallmark store for 30 years. And had the windows all decorated really nice, and everybody was really impressed. Well, I'll get to, Grandma had to go to a nursing home because she just couldn't take care of herself anymore. So we got her over here close so we could all go visit, and we did. And she was there 6 years. And we would visit and take things, but we never, we'd sit in her room and talk, or we'd sit in the lobby, and we just never really got to know any of the people. We spent all our time with Grandma. Well, she had a fall, and we all went over to see what had happened. I was working the polls, and Troy called as Grandma was falling, and I said, well, I can't leave, but Brandon's coming to vote, so he'll be there right away, and he was. And then I got off early, and we all went there. We met a couple of cousins that had come from Cincinnati, Ohio, and she looked fine, but she wouldn't get up. I said, well, she just can't lay here in bed. We've got to get her up and do something. So I said, I'll volunteer. I'll come tomorrow, and I'll get her up for lunch, because I can't see to drive at night. So the rest of you can decide what you want to do, but I'll get her for lunch. And I had to have help getting in her wheelchair. She didn't want to get up, but we got up and went down to the dining room, and all these people just came out of everywhere. Oh, Artie, we're so glad you're back. Because she'd fallen earlier, and we didn't know how many days ago that had been, So they were happy to see her, and I sit with her, and I realized, well, she can't cut up her food. She said she couldn't see really what everything was, so I told her and sit with her, and we ate, and there were people that came up. Now I can't mention any names because of, I don't know, they don't want to have you give out any information. So Lady Mrs. A sat at our table, and she was very sweet, and I realized she had trouble cutting up her food too. So I asked if I could cut her food up. Well, Troy had sent lemon pie that he had baked, a piece for me and a piece for Grandma. Well, Grandma had her piece, and so I asked Mrs. A, I said, would you like this piece of pie? And she goes, oh no, I don't want to take that. And I said, no, I'll split it. I'll give you half of it. Well, she ate the half of it, and I thought she was going to lick the plate. She goes, lemon pie is my favorite pie. And I said, well, then you have this other half. Oh no, I couldn't take it. And I said, Mrs. A, you've been eyeing it since you finished the other one. I said, you have this piece of pie. I don't like lemon pie. That's not true, but that's what I told her. And she ate it. And every day I would go back and we would have lunch together. And every day I would meet new people. Now, Mr. B, he loved Grandma, and he looked after everybody. He kind of went around and checked on people to make sure they were okay. And he said, oh, I love Artie. And he was just the sweetest man. And then there was Mr. C. He was a chef and in the military. And one day I went up to him and I said, okay, somebody tell me something I don't know. And he told me how many rounds this gun could make and shoot how many bullets and all that. And I said, well, that is certainly something I didn't know. But he complained about the food. Well, after a while, they all came to me and complained about the food. So Mr. C, the chef, said, I really would like a piece of cheesecake. So I went and got him a cheesecake. And I said, no, you have to share. You can't eat the whole cheesecake yourself. But I got to know him. And then there was Mr. D, who I thought maybe was Hawaiian or Asian. I wasn't really sure. He didn't speak. He just kind of mumbled. And then occasionally he'd burst into song. Now, if I'd have known the song, I would have joined in, of course. But he would say something like, sounded like seesaw. Seesaw. So I just started going, when I see him, I go, seesaw, seesaw. And he would go, seesaw, seesaw. And he was just a really nice guy, and he would sit at our table and eat too, so it was quite fun. And we had a table of military people, and I just really got to know all these people. Well, all this time that I'm there, I'm finding out what a great influence Grandma was. She never missed church there. She never missed Bible study. Different people came in and told Troy and I that she really helped me through this. She did, so she was still doing all this stuff for other people. And when she did get sick, as we waited with Grandma the last week, there were lots of people coming to see her. Mr. B came in the room twice and cried and knelt at the foot of her bed and prayed. People that lived there and people that worked there all came in and talked to her. We heard stories about how she had helped people all the time. She was there, never missed Bible study or church. She always said that God was the first one she talked to in the morning and the last one she talked to at night. And she asked me if I did that. And I said, yes. And she goes, what do you say? And I said, I thank God that I made it through the night and the cats. And I thanked him for getting me from the kitchen to my chair without falling over a cat and spilling my coffee. Well, she didn't think that was funny. Grandma never ate junk food or drank spirits or even sodas. She believed in eating healthy and being active. Now, her favorite Bible verse was Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. and she did. She was very strong. Now, Grandma used her finger a lot to make, she wanted to make a point. I wouldn't have told you that if it wasn't true. And if she went, I said one time, I said, now come on, Grandma, those vegetables are good. You need to eat them and get strong so you can go to Choice for Thanksgiving. And she goes, you're not my mother.
Oh.
And I said, but I'm my mother and I'm telling you to eat those vegetables. And she shook her finger back at me. Now, Carol Dockery, who was a cousin, sent me some things that Grandma had said more than once, and she thought I might want to share them. My mother was an angel on earth. I never heard her yell or raise her voice, but she did make us mind. I was the youngest of 12. Can you believe that? My sister Angie was 2 years and 2 months older than me, wanted to be the baby. I never wanted to be the baby. I wanted to do all that my mother and Lovey did. I made a dress at 12 and never used a pattern. I broke my back and the Lord healed me completely, which was true. She broke her back, and 2 days later she was sitting up. And the doctor couldn't believe it, but her faith. I never have an ache or a pain. She never, when you go, how are you, Grandma? She goes, I don't have an ache or a pain. I don't know what people do who don't know the Lord. I would go crazy here by myself.
Mhm.
I'm so happy you came to see me. If I can't be in my home, this is the best place to be. Everyone is so friendly and nice here. I try to behave myself. Well, before Grandma passed away, she had a line of people that came in and wanted to say goodbye to her, and she died peacefully in her sleep. Troy and I were there. My alarm went off for Troy to call me and tell me to take my pills, and he said, why don't you Uber home? And I go, no, I can stay here or I can walk. I don't need to Uber. And during our conversation, Grandma passed away. I told Troy, I said, I don't think she wanted to hear us argue. So she left. Now, I was cleaning out her room in the nursing home, and several people came in and told me how much she'd done for them. I think I already said that. Mrs. A came in and said she's going to miss us both at lunch. Mr. B came in and hugged me and cried. And Mr. D just held my hand and looked real sadly into my eyes. Now, for me knowing these people and being able to spend the last few days, weeks, with Grandma Artie was probably the best Christmas present anybody could have ever given me. Now, part 2 of my message. How am I doing on time?
Got about 3 more minutes.
Okay, well, see, and I cut that out, but I cut stuff out. Anyway, we're going into 2024. It is not looking good. We have got crazy people running things. There's a song, Trouble. We got trouble right here in River City with a capital T. It rhymes with P, and it stands for Putin. Putin is an idiot. He's a war-hungry, land-grabbing, just like the czars before him. And if Congress thinks that he's going to stop with Ukraine, they're out of their minds. And speaking of Congress, they don't do anything. They can't make up their mind on anything. I mean, there are 3 things going on: the border, Ukraine, and Israel. And they just can't. We've got to go on vacation and think about it. So we've got that problem. We've got people at the border. We've got an idiot over in Israel who's now turned Gaza into the Warsaw Ghetto. War is not the answer. War is not healthy for children and animals. And you're not going to start peace talks by killing your children. Is there anything else on here? Our country is so divided. Trouble also with rhymes with P and it stands for president. We have some really interesting people running for office. One's quoting Hitler. One's not sure how the Civil War started or why we fought it. And another people feel is too old. Is this the best we can do? I'm so worried with us being so divided that whoever wins the election, we're going to have trouble with a capital T. Now, I always end my messages with the prayer of protection, but this is something that was on a Christmas card that I did back in the 70s when I was a hippie. It said, throughout the world, in every heart, in every home, one prayer, that all men live as brothers and that peace reign everywhere. My wish for you and all the world, peace.
one of the staples of this time of year is all those on televisions, the list of all the famous people who died, whether on the news or Turner Classic Movies, all the producers and writers, and the big names. And that hearing Chip's story about Grandma Artie, who I never met, that I'm aware of, and the remarkable life. I mean, I may have met her because Nancy and I lived in Newcastle for a while, and we went down to South Memorial Church of God for occasional Christmas services. I mean, Thanksgiving services for the community. But it was a remarkable life to hear Chip tell it. And I thought, okay, what if all the remarkable lives that everybody has lived, every life is remarkable at some level, and in that dash, how we live our lives certainly makes them truly important and helpful or less than. But I think of all the people she touched, and I think of people that I've loved who've passed, and not just family, but friends, and the ripples of life that reach out and touch so many people that we're not even aware of. And I think in some ways that's a good thing, that we're not aware. But I think those are the really important people, not the Putins, not the presidents. They certainly influence at certain levels, but who makes a neighborhood worth living? Who makes a church warm and welcoming? Who makes education matter in a child's life? It's all these individuals collectively who commit themselves to living lives of compassion and care, and for many, following the life of the Spirit, and asking and thanking God for the opportunity to be alive. I was just struck by how every life really is extraordinary.
hearing Chip speak about his mother's birthday would have been today reminds me that my mother's birthday would have been today also, 107 years. My sister sent a message out this morning saying, remembering and celebrating our mother on what would have been her 107th birthday, remembering her for her kindness, her deep love of her family and God, and her welcoming hospitality, as well as her love of German chocolate cake. And several of the family members responded with similar memories of kitchen conversations and her welcoming spirit and sort of humility. In her quiet way and in her leadership positions, we think she did represent that of God and affected many people.
Dan and I had presented to us this week, the question is, so what do you think about heaven? I responded that I am becoming more and more convinced that heaven isn't for the afterlife, it's for this life. And that our relationship with God and our relationship with others is where we find it. And believe that people you're speaking of have done a lot to create heaven on earth through the love and service and care that they have for other people. And we needn't spend our life preparing for the next heaven. We need to spend our life being the hands of God to create heaven on earth. She was relieved when she heard us say that, wasn't she?
Are all hearts clear? Close meeting?
I promise next time will be better.
That's good. You did fine.
Well, it's good to see you, Sue.
Let's see.
Bye, Sue.
Tell the cat hi.
Well, sometimes